We are back here on Section 415, and it's a pleasure to welcome in our Golden State Warriors beat reporter for the San Francisco Standard, Danny Emerman. Danny, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Kerry. Hello from sunny Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado, where the Golden State Warriors are getting set to play their 10th game of the season on Friday evening. Very much looking forward to your coverage for the San Francisco Standard and a rematch of two teams that played in game 2 of the regular season for Golden State, an overtime victory, and one that gave, Danny, I'll say it, a lot of folks around this team confidence that this could be a special season. And in the wake of that win, the Warriors really struggled. They've gone on the road 4 times, lost 4 games on the road: Portland, Milwaukee, Indiana, and then Sacramento on Wednesday evening earlier this week. What's been the through line of their struggles on the road? Why is this team failing to win away from Chase Center?
Yeah, well, I think that's the right way to frame it. It's two sides of the same coin. This team at its best is as good. It looks to be as good as anyone in the West, just to beat Denver, a true championship contender, and even to beat the Lakers in the season opener. They looked like real playoff contenders. Everything was clicking. New starting lineup looked great. The vets looked fresh. And then the flip side of that is on the road, they've struggled. Milwaukee, Indiana, Portland, all those 3 games. I'm throwing out Wednesday night in Sacramento as kind of a nothing game, but those 3 road games away from Chase Center have been a real struggle. And in each of them, the veterans' legs have been heavy. They've came out flat. Steph Curry hasn't been himself necessarily. So the through line there is it's just a real reminder that this group is at the end of the day built on 4 35 years old and up players. And those types of teams tend to not get through a regular season swimmingly. They don't get through regular seasons without bumps and bruises, without speed bumps. And the Warriors have already hit some. So it's a real reminder that this is a long season and that it's not going to be easy.
I want to zero in on the road trip to Milwaukee and Indiana. You were around the team traveling to those games, and the Bucks game in particular surprised me because a few minutes before tip-off, it's announced that Giannis will not play for Milwaukee, and you're thinking, okay, the Warriors have Steph, they have Jimmy, they have Draymond, full complement of stars. They should be able to beat this Bucks team. But Steve Kerr said post-game after a disappointing loss that Golden State tends to play down to their opponent's level when they don't have their star on the floor. What do you make of that trend that's really transpired through the years now?
Yeah, for that exact reason, the Bucks loss was a little bit less surprising to me. We've seen it for years with this team, and this is a team that's played at the highest levels of the NBA for the better part of a decade. So it makes sense on a human level that they might let their guard down a little bit when a player like Giannis is, ruled out, scratched right before tip off. Um, I was in the arena. Giannis got scratched about 30 minutes before tip off. I was eating some barbecue nachos in the concourse with a young Bucks fan, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that Giannis wasn't going to play. And a few minutes later, like, the public address announcer in the arena announced it that Giannis Antetokounmpo is inactive, and the kid was so bummed. I felt so bad for him. That was heartbreaking. But in the locker room, the Warriors learned around the same time. It was right, in their pregame meeting that they learned. And Steve, he kind of has it's like a radio, soundboard at this point. Like, he hit the button. He's like, guys, we've got to lock in. We've seen this movie before. We can't let up. This is when teams are at their most dangerous. This is when they have nothing to lose. And guys are going to have opportunities they might not have otherwise. And they're going to play super hard. And we can't let them play with more energy than us. And he can say it, but you've got to go out on the floor and do it. And too many times in the past couple of years, the Warriors have not risen to the level of energy and effort in those types of games. And that's what we saw in Milwaukee.
Well, you referenced the heavy legs from the Portland game and the Warriors playing the back end of a back-to-back after beating the Nuggets. And we also saw that fatigue kick in for the second game of that road trip. After Milwaukee, the Warriors go on to Indianapolis, and they really struggle to close out the Pacers late. The Pacers have the finishing kick that the Warriors are unable to produce, and they win that ball game. I wonder, is it a concerning sign for this team that the fatigue has kicked in so early? Because we anticipated this would be the case for an older team. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler, Al Horford. We knew that they wouldn't get through this regular season unscathed. But for this to be the case in the first 10 games, how much of a red flag is that?
It might make sense intuitively that they would be fresher at the beginning of the season, but in reality, that's not how it's played out, and it's just because the schedule has been brutal. They're the only team in the league that has a back-to-back every single week for the first 5 weeks. They played I think they played their first 7 or 8 games before any team played 5 games. They are on the road. They're playing 3 games in 4 nights. They're playing 6 games in 5 different cities. It's been tough. So it makes sense that they would be fatigued even early on just because of how difficult the travel has been and how bunched up their schedule has been. The flip side of that is that eventually it'll cool off. The schedule always comes around, it evens out. But right now they've got to get through a really tough portion of their schedule for the next couple weeks still. And they need to come out of it with wins for sure, but they need to come out of it healthy more than anything because it's a long season. And if you can't get through the opening 5 weeks of the season healthy, then you're really going to be on your back foot.
Let's get to headline number 2 here. We started this episode talking about the Warriors' difficulties on the road, which is, of course, a big concern early this year, but there have been some positive developments through the first 9 games and entering Friday's matchup against the Denver Nuggets, and that is the emergence of Jonathan Kuminga. He got off to a really hot start to begin the season. Moses Moody playing some of the better basketball of his career, 28 points on Wednesday against the Sacramento Kings, and then Will Richard, the rookie second-round pick, going from a DNP to 30 points against Sacramento on Wednesday night. And I know it came at a loss, and I know the defense isn't as sharp as the Warriors need it to be right now, but how do you think each of these players have individually adjusted to their roles and the expectations that the Warriors have for them?
So I'll start with Moody, because he's someone who has had to adjust to varying roles his entire career, and he's always done it nothing but professionally and with maturity, and that's no different now. But he was in line to start, opening this season, opening day. He was part of the Warriors' best lineup last year, the group that led the second half surge, that went 23-8, had a plus 17 net rating. The small ball unit with Moody at the three spot and Draymond Green playing center. That's probably how the Warriors were going to start this season. But Moody's calf started barking towards the end of the preseason. He missed the first few games. Jonathan Kuminga took his spot in the starting lineup. Moody has returned, and his shot looks incredible. He's shooting 51% from deep. He made a mechanical tweak in the offseason to it. It looks a little bit faster. That's something in the past that's been an issue where he hasn't been able to get his shot off as fast as he needed to. And that's not just decisiveness. It's, mechanically his shot was a little bit slow. It looks faster now. It's got more pop. It's got a little bit more arc. So that is a huge development for them. And he's going to make a case, just the way that he's playing on both ends of the court. He's going to make a case to rejoin that starting lineup pretty soon. I'd imagine he's their best point of attack defender. He's one of their better 3-point shooters. And that's really vital for this team that needs spacing. Kuminga, meanwhile, has played really well, in the starting lineup. He has done everything this coaching staff has wanted him to do over the past 4 years. He is defending better than he ever has. He's taking on tougher assignments than ever. He's rebounding better than he ever has. He's making better decisions. Wednesday night, not really included. He had 6 turnovers. But he's playing within himself more. He's not forcing the issue as much. He's doing more with the ball with fewer opportunities, meaning he has the ball less, his usage rate is down, but he's being more effective in those opportunities he has. So that's a great development too. And the last guy is the 56th overall pick, Will Richard, and he's been a revelation. It's another guy, another gem that Mike Dunleavy has unearthed late in the draft, and the kid just knows how to play. Through summer league, through preseason, through limited minutes in the first few games, he's always looked like he belongs on the court. And that's no different, after Wednesday night where he scored 30 points in his NBA debut as a starter. Um, he looks like he belongs. I love the way he defends and rebounds. He's got a great wingspan. I like the way that he cuts and times his cuts backdoor. Even when he doesn't get rewarded on those plays, those cuts, the way that they're timed and how hard he's running, they open up opportunities for other players on the perimeter because the defense has to react to him. So it's a huge, you know, advantage from a roster and rotation perspective, definitely. But from a team building standpoint, having a guy in the late second round on the cheapest possible contract, especially when you have the highest paid player in the league, Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler making a ton of money, to have that guy on such a cheap deal, being able to contribute right away is a massive, massive thing to have as a team.
Let me ask you a quick follow up to Kuminga and Moody, because it seems as if the Warriors have seen encouraging signs from both of these players early in the season, and yet they haven't necessarily clicked together. Is there something that you think the Warriors, Steve Kerr, can explore, or maybe these two players together can explore the natural rhythm of being on the court that would help them unlock a combination that would get them playing in rhythm at the same time?
Definitely. That's the way that the coaching staff thinks all the time. It's about the puzzle pieces fitting together and about lineup combinations that work and that make the most out of each piece. I think when it comes to Moody and Kaminga specifically, Moody is a guy who has had a ton of success playing with Jimmy Butler. And Jonathan Kaminga has been spending a lot of time with Jimmy Butler, as a mentor mentee relationship. And the reason why Moody has succeeded with Butler is because Butler is really great at breaking down his man, getting into the teeth of the defense in the paint, and then spraying out passes to the perimeter, to each corner, and that's where Moody usually operates. So if they're in lineups together, I think there would be opportunities for that kind of structure for Kaminga to take his man off the dribble, to get into the lane, and to dish to the opposite corner for Moody. And that's an area where Kaminga has really, really looked great this year. So I wouldn't necessarily put too much stock into their limited, like small sample size together this year, especially with the way that Kaminga's playing. I think it's a pair that could work.
Okay, so let's get to headline number 3 here. If our first point of discussion is the Warriors' road struggles, our second point of discussion is some of the young players who are performing well. There's a reason this team isn't thriving, Danny, and that is some of the rotation players are off to colder starts than the Warriors expected. I would include Al Horford in that conversation. He went 0 for 7 from 3-point range on Wednesday night in Sacramento. I would include Brandon Pajemski, who's been good at times, but maybe inconsistent, more inconsistent than the Warriors anticipated. And then Gary Payton II, who the Warriors brought back, and you knew that there weren't going to be a ton of huge opportunities for Gary Payton because he's a lower in the rotation player, but I think his minutes have been inconsistent at best, if I'm describing it in a kind way. What would you make of those 3 players and their performances so far?
Well, that's certainly one of the reasons why this team has struggled on the road. I would put Steph Curry struggling in those games is probably the biggest reason.
Yeah.
Um, this team goes as far as Steph Curry will take them, and he has not been at his best in the Portland game, Milwaukee and Indiana too. So that's probably the biggest reason. But in terms of those rotation players, I would put Brandon Pajemski in a different bucket than Horford and GP2. Pajemski's a guy who, even when his shot is off, he's still going to make winning plays generally. The team is still going to be better with him on the court. Even Wednesday night, he had a poor shooting night, but the team was plus 14 in the minutes that he played. There's a case that he should have played even more, even though he was struggling and making mistakes that were pretty loud. There was one sequence where he made, I think he made a bad pass turnover, and then on the inbounds pass, he didn't look for it, and Draymond threw it away, or someone threw it away into nobody at half court. Pajemski got pulled right after that. Like, those are huge mental mistakes that can't happen. Even so, he's still gonna take charges. He's still gonna get into the lane. He's gonna break down the defense, and those are valuable skills that not everyone on the team has. Um, Horford and Gary Payton II meanwhile, have both had really slow starts. And with GP2, it's been rough.
Yeah.
A lot of his minutes in the past have been tied to Steph Curry because he's such a limited player on offense. And he is very good at playing off Steph, setting screens for him. He knows how to navigate the half court with Steph. Um, he kind of needs to be connected with him. Without Steph on the court, there's not much for him to do on offense. And a lot of those minutes this year have gone to Jonathan Kuminga, and rightfully so. Kuminga's outplayed him in every facet of the game. So if you're not going to get the GP2 Steph combo minutes, there's really not going to be much opportunity for him. In addition to that, like, frankly, his on-ball defense has slipped, and we saw it last year. It would make sense that, it would continue to this year. He's not getting any younger. He's not getting, any like healthier long term. He's been banged up a lot over the course of his career. But yeah, he's not the same defensive ace stopper that he once was. So that's basically all of Gary's value to this team in those two buckets. So if those things aren't clicking, he's not going to be one of Steve Kerr's like most trusted options. Then Horford is the last player that you mentioned. He's shooting 29% from three.
Mhm.
Brutal shooting start for him this year. They signed him to space the floor and to play defense and to be a playmaking hub in limited, second unit capacities and to be excellent in his 20-minute allotments every game. He has played 20 minutes when he's available. He has not been excellent. And I wouldn't worry about it. He's taking good shots. They're open. He's not forcing the issue. The defense has been okay. Milwaukee really, really targeted him on the perimeter, which I was surprised by because historically he's really held up well in those situations on switches. But they had a ton of success going right at him. Ryan Rollins put him in the torture chamber. Bunch of guys on the Bucks perimeter had a lot of success against him. But I don't think it's worth worrying about yet with Horford, even with the age. I just think you got to trust the track record, and the skill set they brought him in for is still there. And you just have to believe that it will show at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That is the Warriors' hope. And speaking of hope, they want Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry all to be back on the floor together in an extended capacity for much of the season. And when we come back, we'll talk more about this Warriors core trio and Danny's expectations for this group amid a rugged early season schedule for the Golden State Warriors and especially for their aging stars. So that's up next right here on Section 415. Danny, we opened this episode talking about the Warriors' struggles away from Chase Center this season, but I think it's important to note that the Warriors have had one of the most difficult schedules in the NBA, and they have one of the most difficult schedules in the NBA at the outset of the season with one of the oldest rosters in the NBA. Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, all older than 35 years old. Al Horford, 39, not going to play back-to-backs this season. We covered that when we had you on for our season preview here on Section 415. But I wonder from your perspective, do you think that the Warriors can realistically expect to start winning games while understanding that they probably won't be pushing Curry and Butler and Green to the max for the next month and a half?
Winning games is probably relative, They've got to come out of this really tough stretch, around 500 and to be treading water at the very least. But I mean, I'll give you their upcoming schedule. It's Friday night at Denver, which is never easy to play in the altitude. Back home for one game against Indiana, who just took it to them at their place. And then they've got another road trip. It's 6 games in 9 days in 5 different cities. And they've got one of the toughest back-to-backs possible this year. Oklahoma City and San Antonio on a back-to-back. So they're going to have to navigate that. Who plays? Do they punt one of the games and try to go for one of them? I don't know which one they would target there. They've got OKC, San Antonio, another one in San Antonio, and in New Orleans, which should be a win. That team is a disaster. And then back-to-back Orlando, Miami. So that's 8 games right there. What do you think is fair to expect them to go in those games?
I mean, fair, probably 3-5. But if you're talking about a team that had projections pointing to a 55, 56 win season at the beginning of the year, 5-3 at worst. And so I wonder,
Hmm.
like, have expectations already changed because of the slow start? Have expectations changed because Steph Curry hasn't looked as good as maybe we've seen him in early days of the regular season in prior seasons? Do you get the sense that that audacious win total might not be realistic for this Warriors team?
Well, I never thought that particular win total was realistic. Um, but I don't know, I guess you can fact check me on this. I think I said 51 or 52 wins in
Yeah.
our season preview pod. I
Mhm.
think that's still a fair target for them. Like I mentioned earlier, the natural reaction of this tough schedule to begin with is that it evens out, you know? In April, they are in California the entire month. In January, they are home for almost the entire month. Same with February. So they're going to get 5 of their 15 back-to-backs done in the first month of the season, which is crazy to think, but they're going to have um they're going to have 20% of their games done in their first 5 weeks. They're going to have a third of their back-to-backs done in the first 5 weeks. They're going to have a third of their road games out of the way in the first 5 weeks. So they're going to be home for the majority of the back half of the season. They're going to be more rested. I still think it's fair to expect them to get out of the play-in. I don't think this first, you know, tough stretch is worth hand wringing about. It's a long season. They know that. It's going to be difficult to navigate, no doubt, but this team has the talent to win 50 plus games.
So I guess I'll close with this: the Warriors 5-4 headed to Denver on Friday night, where you are coming to us live on the podcast. And I wonder, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerning is the 5-4 start? Understanding that this team's schedule has been difficult, and understanding that it might take some time for the veterans to hit a groove. With all of those caveats, where do you fall on the 1 being no reason to worry and 10 being, yeah, the Warriors do have some big picture issues that probably can't be overcome?
Probably like 3.5,
Okay.
not too concerning. It's still so early, man. Like let's get to Christmas and then reevaluate.
That's what every great NBA writer says. Let's get to Christmas. Let's get the season going then. Danny Emerman coming to us from Denver ahead of the Warriors matchup on Friday against the Nuggets. Danny, thank you so much for joining Section 415.
Let's get to the NBA Cup Emirates in-season tournament before hitting the panic button.